Hello everybody, Jeremy Dickinson here. Thank you for watching. In this video I want to spend some time talking about meta-ethics, a bit more about it. I've talked a bit about ethical anti-realism, which we recall is the view that ethical facts don't exist. And I've also talked a bit about what's called ethical skepticism, the view that that we don't have or can't have ethical knowledge. Now, in this video, what I like to do is look at the other side of the debate. I want to look at the ethical realist side. I'm going to focus on the ethical realism, setting aside the debate about whether or not we can have ethical knowledge. So in this video, I'm going to focus on three arguments from the work of David Enoch, who's been very influential in this area, recently developing arguments for ethical realism. The idea that there are ethical facts, and these ethical facts are objective features of the world. Now, meta-ethics, as we recall, just to catch everyone up to speed, is that part of ethics that's concerned in part with the metaphysics of ethics, the epistemology of ethics. What does this mean? Well, it means that it's concerned with whether or not ethical facts exist, and if so, what kinds of things they are, and then if not, providing arguments for why we should think that there aren't any ethical facts. And then it's also that part of ethics that's concerned with establishing whether or not we have or can have ethical knowledge, and if so, how it is that we can have this kind of knowledge. There are other aspects of meta-ethics, but let that suffice for just a miniature introduction to what meta-ethics is. I want to jump to the arguments in this video. So David Enoch gives us three arguments to think about. The first argument, let's call it the argument from disagreement. Now, this argument has it that the nature of ethical disagreement gives us reason for thinking that there are such things as objective ethical facts. Okay, this is an interesting line of argument because it's been the case that traditionally anti-realists, ethical anti-realists, have tried to argue that ethical facts don't exist because of disagreement. They argue along the following lines, roughly. There's widespread ethical disagreement, either individually or on the basis of comparing cultures. And given this disagreement, we have reason to think that there aren't any ethical facts, because were there ethical facts, we would be able to come to know them in such a way that we wouldn't disagree as much as we in fact do. Now, Enoch, he says, well, let's look at the nature of our disagreements. When we ethically disagree about something, what we have are usually two or more people engaged in a debate about whether or not they're ethical facts, and one side is attempting to provide reasons for thinking that some ethical fact or other holds, and another side is trying to argue the opposite, and they're providing reasons in both cases. In other words, what these sides are trying to do is they're trying to show that their claim about some ethical judgment is right. So it's presupposed in these disagreements is the fact that the sides in the disagreement are trying to get at something objectively true that would make what they're claiming, what they're arguing, true. So let's just look at an example to make this clearer. Suppose person one is arguing that torture is always wrong in every circumstance. Suppose another person says, no, it's not always wrong in every circumstance. There are extreme cases, maybe to prevent terrorism, in which we could torture suspected terrorists in our custody. And these sides are disagreeing. Person one is saying that there's an ethical fact here, and the other person saying, no, that's not an ethical fact, but rather it's permissible, or person two is saying that what the person one is saying is not an ethical fact, but is claiming that something else is an ethical fact. So people are disagreeing about what counts as ethical. And what Enoch has us do is he has us reflect on what's going on here. The person who's arguing that there are or that torture is always ethically wrong is presupposing that he or she is right when he or she gives the arguments for his or her position. And same thing is happening with the second person. The second person who says that it's permissible in some cases to torture is laying out an ethical claim, offering reasons to think that the ethical claim in question that's being put forward is true. And so both sides are, in some sense, presupposing the truth of their claims, or presupposing that there is a truth of the matter in their claims. So when person 1 disagrees with person 2 in these kinds of situations, person 1 is presupposing that person 2 is wrong, and vice versa. This gives us reason to think that there's something objective, some kind of objective standard that provides a way of helping us figure out which of the 2 claims is true. It's either never permissible, or it's sometimes permissible. Something's got to give, and the nature of our disagreements, our ethical disagreements, suggests that we think that there's a right answer. Okay, so that's the first line of argument, the argument from disagreement. Now, another line of argument that Enoch has us think about, it involves thinking about our psychology to some degree, about what we do when we make ethical decisions. What we do when we make ethical decisions typically is we do some kind of deliberation. We deliberate about what we should do, and then we end up deciding what to do on the basis of our deliberations. And what Enoch says is when we think very carefully about ethical deliberation, we are attempting to do what we think is right. So suppose we find ourselves in a situation where we're confronted with someone who's in need in front of us. We happen to be walking around downtown, and we notice that someone's in need in front of us. At least some of the times we stop to think, don't we? We think, should we help the person who's there? We deliberate. We start offering reasons for and against helping the person who's in front of us, who's in need. And what Enoch argues is that this kind of process of deliberation is different in kind from trying to select like what kind of coffee we're going to get from Starbucks, or what kind of ice cream flavor we're going to enjoy this evening. But rather, it's the kind of deliberation that involves trying to get something right, and in this case, trying to get our actions right, trying to arrive at the right decisions, as we sometimes say. So this feature of our ethical lives, the fact that we deliberate, and when we deliberate ethically, we try to get things right, gives us reason for thinking that there is a right answer. There is the right thing to do as a matter of objective fact. So that's the argument from deliberation. The third argument that Enoch has us consider is one that involves thinking about how the world could be different in all kinds of ways than it actually is, and then thinking about how it is that many of our ethical judgments would remain untouched by these differences. So, for example, if we were to think about our society as involving, or as consisting of having individuals that value racism, or that they value, by and large, things like enslaving others, so they're pro-slavery. And this may not be too difficult to imagine. You maybe just have to go back historically a couple hundred years, maybe even sooner. And in these situations, if we were to think about our world as being much different than it in fact is, and if it's easier, like our country is being much different than it in fact is, say involving lots of people who are openly, severely racist and pro-slavery, we would still, by and large, judge that slavery is wrong, or that racism is wrong. So we can imagine the world being much different than it in fact is. We can imagine our society being much different than the way it in fact is in terms of what we value. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that there's no racist, there's no pro-slavery people existing nowadays. I'm just suggesting that it's not very common. And if the world were such that it were common to value racism and to value slavery, maybe as the world once was, not too long ago, we would still judge that slavery, racism is wrong. And the same would hold true for many other kinds of actions, like rape. We think that if people valued raping people, we would say that we still judge that it's wrong to rape, or think if society somehow had Nazi ideals of genocide, we would, and by and large they did, we'd still think that we would judge that genocide, Nazi forms of genocide, perhaps genocide period, would count as wrong. So the point here is that our ethical judgments, the ones that we routinely have, are ones that are resistant from what's called counterfactual pressure. The counterfactual that refers to the way the world could be, or the way the world would be, were different than ours, and the way in which the world could be different from the way it in fact is that the world could involve valuing all kinds of things that we would judge to be wrong. And what Enoch wants us to see is that if that's right, then we think that there are objective ethical facts. The facts are going to hold independently of what people believe or value. So remember, when you think about a view according to which are ethical facts, we're saying that there are objective ethical facts. And if something's objective, if a claim is objective, then it's going to hold independently of other things that we value, or others value, or others would value. So this third argument is a bit more subtle than the first two, but the basic idea, I think, is clear. It's that even if we were to imagine living in a world or society where people had all kinds of values like being pro-racism, pro-slavery, pro-rape, pro-genocide, we would still judge that these things are wrong. Okay, so those are the three arguments. The argument from disagreement, the fact that we disagree, and the nature of a disagreement is such that when we disagree, we take it to be, or we assume or presuppose in our arguments that there's something that's objectively true that would settle the disagreements that we're in. Second, the way in which we deliberate suggests that we're trying to figure out what's the right way, objectively speaking, to act in certain situations that we find ourselves in. And then lastly, our ethical judgments are the kinds of things that are resistant to counterfactual pressure, right? The kind of pressure that comes from thinking about the way the world would be, where we'd have different values and different beliefs about what's right. So those are the three arguments. Now, these three arguments, they don't knock down ethical anti-realism. They don't knock down, prove ethical realism. But according to Enoch, what they do is they give us some powerful initial reasons for thinking that ethical realism is true. Why? Because it's a very, very natural way to think about the world. It's part of our natural judging of the world, that there are ethical facts that constrain and guide our behaviors. And unless, here's a crucial move here, unless there are good reasons for giving up these powerful initial considerations for thinking that ethical facts exist, we should just maintain our beliefs that they do, right? So if an anti-realist comes along and provides us with a very, very powerful argument that shows us that our initial powerful judgments about ethics are wrong, then in those situations perhaps we can revise our beliefs. But when those arguments are lacking, we should hang on to these initial powerful judgments. And initial powerful judgments all involve thinking that, believing that, accepting that there are objective ethical facts. So those are three arguments for ethical realism. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you have any questions, please comment below or send me an email at jedickin@syr.edu. Thank you all for watching. And one last thing, go Dodgers. Bye-bye.